workshop and presentation from Family Promise of the Verdugos. This is the next of now April, our series of workshops throughout 2021. And we're now on the 1st of April. And tonight, we're going to be talking about something that's very important and something that I feel like we need to constantly be checking in on. And I think tonight's going to be a good reminder, because often we can grow a little bit comfortable with just how much of our personal information we are sort of putting out into the world on a daily basis, and especially when it comes to our finances. Today, we're going to be talking about protecting yourself against identity theft. And we have come so far so quickly in terms of technological advances and how we process our financial transactions, how we do our daily business, how we make our purchases, how we monitor our bank accounts, that we've just become so accustomed and used to convenience, and how easy it is for us to be giving away important personal data, important financial data, and how easy it is for our information to sort of be given away and to make a digital footprint out there on the internet, on the web. Very few of us now are actually physically going in and making purchases and making transactions, going into the bank, speaking with a teller. We're doing a lot more of our daily to-dos when it comes to managing our money. We're doing more of it online. And in order to do so, we're having to give up some of the security of doing things in person. I can remember a time where we would just never really use our social security number. That was something that we really didn't share with anybody. And now it becomes so prevalent. We are putting our name out there. We're putting passwords out there. We're putting our social security number out there. We're putting our account numbers out there, our credit card account numbers out there. And this is all sort of, from our perspective, sort of going out into the world as protected. But we have to remember that with all of this access to our data, we may not be as protected as we think we are. And so what we want to do is be vigilant about how we make sure that we're following up to make sure that our information is protected, and that we're not sort of becoming careless with, using very simplistic passwords over and over and over and over for sort of every account that we have, by just sort of haphazardly giving out our social security number, but that we should be vigilant in monitoring and watching our accounts, watching our activity, and protecting ourselves. Because just when we think that everything is okay and we don't have to worry about stuff, that's when we can be taken advantage of. And as was just mentioned, even simple ways that thieves, fraudsters are now fishing for our information, asking us to text them, asking us to call a phone number immediately, that is just sort of out of left field, out of nowhere. It's very easy for us to sort of panic because the bank sent me this text and they need me to do something and I've got to get on that right away. It's so much easier with technology for these thieves to impersonate what we feel are our reputable bank and our credit card companies and so on. So we just, tonight, we want to make sure that we are protecting ourselves, we're protecting our accounts, we're protecting our hard-earned money. And I think here at the beginning of the year, this is a good sort of reminder of what we need to be constantly watching out for. So protecting yourself against identity theft. Did you know that 2 years ago in 2019, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the one that monitors data and statistics on things like fraudulent activity, reported that there was over 650,000 reports of identity theft. People stealing other people's vital information in which they could potentially impersonate you. 650,000. So almost 1 million cases. These are the ones that were reported to the FTC. Now think about this. These are just the ones reported again. So think about all the ones that went unreported. And I'm sure that at some point in your life, hopefully not recently, but at some point, I'm sure something has been stolen of yours. Whether you went to the gas station and you swiped your debit card, or you swiped your debit card at, I don't know, Walmart, and somebody had put some sort of debit credit card scanner, chip reader, something like that in one of the machines, and they stole your information and made fraudulent, charges on your bank account. And I'm sure you've had to go through the process of getting those charges reversed, claiming it as fraud, working with your bank to get the money back. Maybe you've even dealt with fictitious companies that you thought were reputable. You purchased something and they never sent you anything. And they just took your money, literally just took your money. So to me, this is a very, very staggering number. And I can only imagine that the actual cases of identity theft are much, much higher than what's actually reported. And to sort of give you an idea of what thieves are doing with our identity, the number one sort of way in which our identities are being used in these thefts is for credit card fraud. So gaining access to your critical credit card information in which they can make fraudulent charges. There's also bank fraud, like we just talked about, charging on your debit card, making purchases, unauthorized purchases. There's tax fraud, where literally if somebody steals your identity, they can file a tax return for you in order to hopefully steal your tax refund. I mean, it's crazy to think about, but these thieves are brazen enough to even file a return in order to hopefully snatch your tax refund. There's loan fraud, in which thieves will steal your identity and try to borrow money in your name. They try to lease vehicles in your name. I mean, all this sort of activity, once they get a hold of your information, sort of sky's the limit in what they can potentially do with it. And, we think that the more passwords we have, or what we now call multi-factor authentication, right? Which is when you've probably had this on some of your accounts where it's not just a login anymore, but you log in and then it sends you a text. And then that text verifies your identity because it's going to your phone, and you put in a code in order to finally log in. These various layers of authenticating or proving your identity. Thieves are now so smart that they have workarounds for all of this too, right? And it's just so much easier if they can send you a fraudulent text, ask you to call, ask for your name, your date of birth, all the vital information, social security, and so on, and boom, they have it. They have it, right? So all this multi-layer authentication stuff, password protection and all this, while helpful, a lot of that can obviously be worked around and can be hacked. The age demographic that reports the most identity theft are consumers aged 30 to 39, right? If you think about it, that sort of makes sense in terms of who's actually reporting it, right? So 30 to 39-year-olds are sort of in those prime purchasing years where they're making plenty of daily transactions on the day-to-day basis, right? Where they get other age demographics, for example, senior citizens, right? Calls, robocalls, telemarketing calls that are out of the blue, right? Claiming to be somebody that they're not. Even children, they're taking advantage of children's identities because children are less monitored, right? Even college students are being taken advantage of because, What are college students doing in those prime years of their life? They're applying for their first credit card. They are using a lot of mobile technology to manage their bank accounts. They're not doing things in person. They're not doing things by hand. So every sort of age demographic has a vulnerability that we sort of have to be on the lookout for. But 30 to 39-year-olds report the most identity theft. But we're all sort of, I guess, exposed to it, regardless of our age. So what can we actually be doing to monitor, protect our information? And if in the event something happens to us, what are the steps that we take to actually get something resolved? Well, let's talk about the warning signs first. How do I know if I don't actually spot it in my bank account? If I don't see, I don't know, a charge at Target that I didn't make, how can I start to clue myself into the warning signs that maybe perhaps I've been compromised? If you're receiving bills for products or services you didn't buy, that's obviously a dead giveaway, right? This sort of goes under the radar. Discrepancies on your bank or your credit card statement, right? So if you're making multiple transactions a day between gas in the car and food and everything else that you sort of swipe your card for, if you're not checking your online bank statement, if you're not looking at the physical bank statement that's maybe mailed to you, if you're not sort of going line by line, this can become easily missed, right? So a $20 charge here, a $50 charge there, we can miss that sort of thing, right? So I'm not saying that you need to look at your bank account every single day. If you do, more power to you. But I would say at the bare minimum, you go through on a weekly basis the transactions for the week. Just scroll through and make sure, yep, that's what I did on Tuesday. Yeah, that charge at Taco Bell, that makes sense. I did that. Just make sure that everything looks sort of normal based on your habits and your behaviors, okay? If a debt collection agency starts sending you bills trying to collect for accounts that you didn't even know you had or that were even in collections, right? That could also be a warning sign. When we were talking about our credit reports and our credit history, it also really pays to make sure that you're looking at your annual credit report, right? To see, okay, what accounts are open under my name? Like I was telling you before in my own personal example of my wife doesn't have a middle name, right? But when you look at her credit report, we found people with her name opening different accounts that she had never opened by simply just adding a middle initial. And she doesn't have a middle name, right? So that Susie Y Schwartz, I mean, we don't know who that is, but it's obviously not my wife. Looking out for things like that on your credit report is helpful too. If you received a notice that you've been denied for a loan or a line of credit, right? When you never did that, somebody's trying to borrow money in your name. These are some very sort of big red flags, right? So we have to keep our eyes out and open for these, right? And then what can we do? What can we actually do? Can we actually keep our identity from being stolen? No. So let's be clear about that, right? There is no guarantee that we can actually protect ourselves from identity theft, right? We have to look at it as what are ways for us to monitor, try to protect, and then ultimately, if in the event our identity is stolen, how can we recover from that, right? So if somebody is touting identity theft protection, right? These different programs that maybe you've seen on TV or that are being advertised on the internet about LifeLock, right? You've probably heard of an advertisement like that, where they will lock down all of your personal information so that as you use it, it's guaranteed that nobody can steal your identity. Well, to a point, they can protect your information, they can protect your personal data with certain layers of technological encryption. But in the end, just remember, nothing can actually be guaranteed, right? So monitoring can help alert us to signs that we've been compromised, right? There's behaviors that we can, participate in, and then there are services that can help us regain control of our identity and our finances. So what can we actually do, or what are some services? We can use document shredding. Maybe you have a little shredder at home, even if you're vigilant about doing that. So for example, junk mail. We all hate junk mail. There's nothing we can really do to completely eliminate it. But anytime I get junk mail, I try to throw away a majority of it, but I always try to shred my address. Even my name and address, I put it in my little shredder. I don't know. It's just a habit that I've developed, just because I don't want my full name and address, falling off of the back of a trash truck. And maybe that seems paranoid. So obviously we're all comfortable operating, in certain levels or to certain degrees, but it makes me feel better if I can just shred my name and address. If I get offers for credit cards, if I even get a statement for something that is not a bill, I still shred it. And if I don't need to keep it, I shred it. For me, essentially, a majority of what I get, I shred. So if you don't have a little shredder, there's definitely shredding services that you can use. All of these are sort of at varying costs. Maybe you work somewhere where in an office, they have a shredding service for the office. They have these large recycle bins that are locked, and they have a service that comes with the truck, picks it up, shreds it, on site, right? Oftentimes your employer will just allow you to put your personal stuff in there. Something else that you can do is even the UPS store, right? Or certain FedEx, Kinko's, office supply locations will have shredding services. And on average, they charge like $1 a pound, right? So if you have very, very vital information that you've been holding on to just because you don't want to just let it go out into the world, well, I would look into actually taking your information to a place like this and then having it protectively shredded, right? $1 a pound. Oftentimes too, depending on where you live in the community that you live in, there is both shredding days and e-waste recycling. You've probably seen this, where you can take, sometimes there's limits to the number of boxes or to the number of pounds. You can take your past tax returns, all this sort of hard copy information that you want to have shredded, and they'll have sort of a community shred day, or they'll recycle e-waste. So if you've got important data that's sitting on an old computer and you don't want to, take a sledgehammer to it, or you don't want to light it on fire and melt it down, you can recycle it. So there's a lot of community resources that you can look for, right? Go to the city's website, see if the city of Burbank or city of North Hollywood, wherever you live, are offering those services. Oftentimes those are free to the local community. Sometimes businesses will do that. Organizations like Family Promise, nonprofits will sometimes offer that to their community of people. So just keep your eyes out for that. That's one thing that we can actively do to protect ourselves. The other thing is, you've seen this because we just have so many passwords. We have a login to everything, right? And the rules for password encryption and a viable password, when you create an account for something, are getting longer and longer and longer and longer. That's just telling you that no longer can you use 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just not going to protect you anymore, right? As a password. And so now we've got, 8, 10, 12 character minimums with, you got to have a capital, you got to have a number, you got to have a special character, right? It can't be something that you've used in the previous 10 attempts. It is getting more and more and more complicated. There are applications that you can get, or apps that you can get, some of them are free, that will keep track of your passwords. Because you're having to create so many passwords, you don't want to have the same one password for every single account that you have. Probably not a good idea. That needs to be changed up and varied, right? So these applications will remember your password. They will autofill depending on the account that you're trying to log in. So they are remembering your password and they're keeping them protected. They're encrypted, meaning it takes a certain level of hacking ability, if you will, for somebody to break in and get access to that password. So the other thing to do with passwords is, if you're a creature of habit like me, once you set up something, you sort of keep it the same forever. People like us, we have to change it up, right? We have to change that password on a regular basis. So whether it's a password, whether it's your debit card PIN, right? Change it. You can change your debit card PIN by going to the ATM. There's an option to do that, right? You put your ATM card in, you sign in with your current password, and then there's going to be a button to change your PIN. Change it up. Even if you put a reminder in your calendar every 6 months, 3 months, whatever makes you feel comfortable, change your PINs, right? You should not be logging in with the same PIN from 2000, right? So that could potentially save you from fraudulent charges on your debit card. Because let's say I go to the local AM/PM ARCO and I gas up my car, and that reader outside on the pump has some little chip inserted in it because somebody's trying to steal debit card numbers. It could be me just changing that PIN right afterwards. That could make the difference between fraudulent charges on my card or not. So I would say, don't risk it by just assuming nothing's going to happen to you, right? So every quarter, every 6 months, gosh, even if it's on a particular day that my birthday, I'm always going to change my PIN or whatever. Figure out a way to do that on a regular basis. Now, depending on who you bank with, some banks and credit card companies will have statement monitoring services, meaning if they see charges on your card from Chicago, Illinois today, they may give you an alert, right? They may give you a text. They may give you, some banks will even call you, depending, right? To say, look, we just spotted a charge in Chicago, Illinois, and you didn't tell us you were traveling. Is that a legit charge, right? So there are monitoring services that banks and credit cards have. If you plan on traveling, if you plan on going out of state, tell your bank. Some banks won't even allow charges to go through if your card is physically swiped outside of a geographical proximity to the address on record for your card, right? So several months ago, I went up to Oregon. I had to call Wells Fargo and tell them I'm traveling. I want to be able to use my debit card. I didn't want to get somewhere and not be able to use it. So I actually had to sort of tell them my itinerary, so that if there were charges in Oregon, they would know, okay, yeah, he told us he was there. That's probably him. Okay. So we can safeguard ourselves that way as well. And again, just safeguard your personal info. Who you give your social security number to, who do you give credit card authorization to, right? Sometimes when companies, like want to take a payment over the phone, right? I kind of say, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I would just rather do it online because I don't know what that customer representative is going to do with my information. Yeah, they work for the company and technically I'm supposed to trust them, but there's instances of uh, stories of company employees taking credit card information from their customers. I mean, it's just an unfortunate part of a dishonest world. So I think you can also personally sort of safeguard your information by being more vigilant, right? And just sort of using today as a reminder to say, oh yeah, I gotta not be so lenient about who I give my information to. What could happen when somebody gets a hold of our information? They could open up a new line of credit. They could get a credit card in your name. They could take out a loan in your name. As I mentioned before, and it baffles me every time I think about it, how somebody could file a tax return in your name in order to get your tax refund. There's also been stories of thieves stealing your information to get medical services and charge it to your name. People that need procedures, things done, and so on. Why pay for it when we can get you to pay for it? All of this activity in the end is ultimately going to hurt our credit score. And as we've seen before, that can be a process to fix, right? So if we can have the right sort of behaviors right now, we can protect ourselves from that. What are the actual protection services beyond what we do that we could actually employ to monitor, to safeguard, and to maybe recover our identity if it were stolen? I wanted to walk through some of the things that we can do. Okay, so first thing is we could get extra services for identity monitoring. And what that aims to do is minimize the impact of theft by alerting you to suspicious behavior. Okay. So these are services that we can pay a subscription fee for. There's an annual fee for if you wanted to do that. So if there is unauthorized loan applications, if there's documents that they find your identity on, if there's check cashing requests, even if somebody is trying to impersonate you on social media, on the internet, these types of services will alert you and also help you verify or deny that you did that transaction. Okay, so again, it's just monitoring. It can't keep people from stealing your information, but it's going to help you monitor. Then there's identity theft insurance. If your identity is compromised, insurance can help sort of soften the financial blow, right? So insurance accounts for the expenses that are incurred in order to fix those identity theft issues. So to rectify the situation that's related to your stolen identity. So if you have to go through a process where you've got to spend money on postage and getting notary and printing stuff, sometimes the insurance can cover those fees, those expenses, those costs. Sometimes ID theft insurance will cover a percentage of lost wages, right? Will cover a percentage of legal fees, just depending on your level of coverage. That sort of this is an example of maybe an extreme situation. I don't know if we need to insure against identity theft. I think identity theft insurance might be for those of us who have actually had our identity stolen, have gone through the process and really maybe experienced a really bad situation. And then going forward, they feel just more comfortable and better with more peace of mind with this kind of insurance. There's credit monitoring. And a lot of credit card companies actually have this as part of your credit card service, right? So they also monitor not only the activity on your card, but they monitor the activity that appears on your credit report. Okay. So for example, a credit monitoring service would alert you to a new line of credit that's opened up and appears on your credit report. It's alerting you to a new account that has your name on it or a slight variation of your name, right? Like I was telling you about my wife's middle initial. It does not show, though, if a thief was trying to file a tax return in your name. But at least it's monitoring your credit history and your credit report. There are also identity recovery services. Let's say somebody does steal your identity. These recovery services are designed to help you regain control of your identity after it's been compromised. So what they will typically do is match customers with a representative that will help you go through the process step by step to resolve all the theft issues that occurred, right? To make sure that you sort of become whole again. That's sort of the best way for me to describe it. That everything is sort of cleaned up and your personal info is not out there anymore. Different vendors have these services. There's also free resources that you can use, whether it's through your bank, whether it's through your credit card company. So you can also be on the lookout for those services as well. And I think between you and even some of the free services with some of the companies that you work with, I think you can do a lot to protect your identity. Let's say, worst case scenario, let's say your identity is compromised. What should you actually do? Okay. First, you have to find out, where has the fraudulent activity occurred? Is it just in one place? Is it just in your bank account? Is it just a line of credit that was opened up? Or is it all over the place, right? You first have to contact the companies where that fraudulent activity has occurred. So first, figure out where it's happening and contact those companies. Then what you need to do, especially if it's going to affect your credit, a new credit card was opened. There were huge charges on your credit card. You may want to place a fraud alert with one of the major credit reporting bureaus. Okay, so when we've talked about credit reports before, we mentioned there's 3 credit bureaus that monitor our credit: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Okay, you don't have to contact them all, but you may just want to contact one and let them know there was a credit card that was opened in my name. I did not do that. And they can guide you through what you need to do next in terms of keeping that off of your credit report or fixing that on your credit report. Okay. You also want to file an identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission, with the FTC. Okay. And depending on the level of fraud, you may even want to report this to your local police department. Okay. So you need to sort of gauge the seriousness of what's happened. Okay. If you swiped your debit card at Walmart and you made a purchase, and then a couple days later, you saw some other charges that you did not do, or for things that you did not buy, I don't think that that warrants a local call to the, a call to the local police department. You sort of have to determine sort of the seriousness of the fraud. Okay. Now, if there has been a rash of stolen identity in your community, so you've been hearing on the news, you've been, there's different sort of community communications. The city is communicating something. Local people on apps like Nextdoor. So your local community and neighbors are saying, I just had my identity stolen at the local, Chevron station or whatever, and you see other people saying, yes, me too, then you may have a more of a localized issue where somebody is in your community and is trying to steal identities, that you may want to contact the police department and say, look, this just happened to me locally. Is this happening to other people? They may want to take your information because they may be working on a case where they're trying to solve and figure out who is doing this. That sort of would warrant a call to the police department. Then you've got to address the damage, right? Does it mean just calling B of A and getting a charge reversed? Or does it mean calling B of A and saying, look, I think I need a whole new debit card, a whole new account number that is on my debit card related to my checking account? Like, sort of what level or depth does the bank need to work on fixing this for you? Do you need to close accounts? Do you need to put stop payments on things? Do you sort of have to address that level of damage? Are you going to have to correct your credit report? Because if something is already on there, it's on there. So you're going to have to get that resolved. It's not just going to fall off by itself, right? Which is something that we talked about before. And then again, once you've done sort of all of your due diligence and you've tried to fix all this, you've got to circle back to those bureaus again to make sure that it hasn't affected your credit score, right? We don't want it to come back and haunt us when we actually do need to go borrow some money. We're buying a car, we're doing something, and then all of a sudden we can't get the money that we actually need because somebody else was doing stuff in our name that's ruining our ability, for good credit. So I just don't want you to walk into a situation where, man, I was going to get a new vehicle and I just straight up got denied. I had no idea people had stolen my identity. So yeah, always make sure that you follow up. If you've seen it, make sure that it gets fixed. And then that way it's not affecting your purchasing power going forward. I want to just open it up now to questions about this, and maybe people want to share their experiences and maybe sort of what they've gone through in terms of dealing with an issue of identity theft, or maybe what they're doing to actively sort of protect themselves.
Yeah, I can start,
Vivian.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, luckily, I work at USC, and a situation had come up a few years ago where hackers got into the medical information of USC. So USC had offered a credit card, not credit card, but like a identity alert protection for about 2 years and free of charge for the employees. And which was really appreciative.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, so that was one of the things that got resolved right away, because it's like, even though you I only had a few doctors at USC, and I only see them like once every, but like the normal
Sure.
time of things, but still, it's like they took so many information on all their patients that it was really very, I guess you can say, big of USC to cover all their bases, because also the hospital includes donors, high-end donors. So of course they appreciate, the coverage as well. And then I had a situation a long time ago where it turned out I never received my new checks.
Oh.
So I used to have checks delivered to my apartment, and but my thing was, I had a secured area, so so I never received the checks. So we never knew for sure what happened to the checks, like how it got taken, but it wasn't taken from my location. And someone got a American Express credit card under my name and said I charged $2,400 for jewelry. And I said, and it was on
Wow.
Christmas Eve, and they did it twice.
Hmm.
And I said, well, I was at a wedding on the 24th of December.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it was definitely far away from location. So
Hmm.
basically American, and American Express was great too. They canceled the account right away. Um, put a warrant, put a notice that it wasn't me that made the charge and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing was, when they canceled the card, they gave me a new card, but then they didn't activate the new card, and I got and then they said they did, and then when I tried to use a new card like a month or so later, they said it was not activated. I said, okay, that's it, I had it, so I just canceled the card altogether.
Yeah. I mean,
That's the only problem sometimes with that.
yeah, I think companies really do try to understand that a lot of this fraudulent activity is happening, and they are trying to protect the customers and trying to keep your business. But I think your point about USC is an interesting one, because we also have to remember that even large institutions that are going above and beyond to protect people's information, it can still get leaked out. It can still get hacked. It reminds me of a situation that we had several years ago where even there were data breaches, even in the credit bureau, the credit reporting bureaus,
Mhm.
the TransUnion, the Equifax, the Experian, even they had leaks of information or getting hacked, right? So even the companies that are supposed to be monitoring our credit history and making sure it's all verified and true and correct and giving us our credit score and all that, we're even getting hit. And we're offering the same sort of like free 2-year service in order to try to regain people's confidence. But I think I think this is so important because we live in a day and age where, yes, we have technology as a convenience, but it is putting our information at a risk, right? And so even with the most reliable, trustworthy companies, we still have to sort of cover our bases and not just be um, sort of willing to accept that we're always safe. I don't think that's probably the best way to
Yeah.
operate, right?
Wasn't
So,
there a credit reporting company that went out of business?
yes.
Was that Equifax or was
Uh,
that someone else?
um, no, I'm forgetting the name, but yes, there was one agency that did.
Yeah, because it was just so mind-boggling what had happened that there was no way they could rectify the situation, and they basically just went out of business because, like you said, they lost confidence in them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Also, I think it's kind of funny. I was watching a show like a long, long time ago, and it had something to do with there's this person whose identity was stolen.
Hmm.
He was arrested, or they found her dead. It was like a bizarre story, and it's like, and it made me think that could happen to us. Like if someone took our identity and something happened to that person with your identity,
Yeah,
and they declare you dead, they can that process alone itself
right.
can can lock out your account because they said, well, we're showing you dead. And I said, I'm right here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Vivian, that's an extreme situation, but it does prove the point of, like, we could be in a situation where we're actually having to try to prove our true existence,
Mhm.
um, which is just, it's mind boggling to think about. But that's even more reason why I think, yeah, we want to be protecting our money, but yet we're now in a situation where we're having to protect more than just our money. We're actually protecting, our true identity.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it pays for us to just put in place some very basic sorts of habits to monitor our accounts, to be careful with who we give our information to, how much of our information is going out there, and
Mhm.
then just making sure that, hard copy stuff, we're being vigilant about shredding, and just we're protecting ourselves. We're changing up our passwords, we're changing up our pins,
Mhm.
and maybe even maybe it even means using a little less technology here and there. That can also be helpful as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think today
Yeah.
is a good reminder for all of us. I hope that you'll join us next time. Actually, this month in April, we're going to be having 3 different sessions just because it's a longer month. So the way that the days work out in April, we're going to have one at the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, and we're going to even squeeze in a 3rd workshop at the end of the month, just because it's a longer month. So next time, on the 15th at 6 p.m., we're going to talk about buying a vehicle with confidence. So if you are thinking about buying a new vehicle, a used vehicle, what are the different ways that I can properly go through the process of buying a vehicle and being in control of the process, right? And not feeling like you just wanted to go take a test drive and now all of a sudden, you know, you're way in over your head because now they're thinking they've sold you something and you're signing up for a monthly payment that you're freaking out because you can't afford, right? So we want to talk about the car buying process and what you can do as a consumer to protect yourself in that process, get a good deal, do it the right way, and make sure that you end up with something that is affordable and is within your budget. So that's going to be next time on April 15th at 6 p.m. We hope to see you all then. We'll have a 3rd one at the end of April as well. And in the meantime, whether it's soon here in April or if it's before the summer, if you want to meet with me one-on-one and do some Zoom financial planning for your specific situation, you can always reach out to Lisa and connect with her and schedule that through her as well. And if you are needing help with anything else when it comes to your situation, even outside of finances, if you have questions about your rental situation, if you have questions about unemployment, if you have questions about resources that you need for your family, Lisa is the go-to person to talk to about that. And if she doesn't know the answer, she will absolutely find and get you the answer. So she's available to you as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is use us, because between myself and her, you know, we're on your team. So let us know how we can best help you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks on April 15th.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
One last,
That, I was gonna say,
one
that
last
would
thing.
have been tax day.
one last thing. So we're having Express Employment come in on the 8th and the 22nd. So if anybody's looking for work, please log on to Zoom. They will be hosting on the 8th at 6 and the 22nd at 6 p.m. as well. And as always, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you again,
Awesome.
Brian.
Well, great. I hope you guys take advantage of that. If you're looking for a job or looking for the possibility of new work, I think that's a great opportunity. So
Yes.
Yeah, thanks to Lisa as well. And thank you guys for being here this evening. And have a great start to April. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.